Hello and welcome everybody to part 2 of the biggest stories in rugby league's latest decade. In part 1, we covered the exit of Sam Burgess and South Sydney, the Cleary coaching roundabout, the in at the Tigers, back to the Penrith Panthers, the stopping of the world, and some of the things that happened in and around COVID, how we bounced back from that. Wayne Bennett and his release from the Broncos and the rise and fall of the Bulldogs. Wow, that story take us down some deep rabbit holes. In the second part, we are, as always, joined by leading journalist Michael Chammas and Charlie White, who is playing with a ball.
Yes, I am. It was a very deep episode last week, actually. Felt like Chammy and I were your psychologists there for a bit, just going down memory lane.
Yeah, rehab. Mate, I was saying to Tony just before that, obviously you, well, as a player there at the Dogs, you were living this, and it's very important to you, and you're kind of in a bubble, but you kind of forget just how interested people are. And obviously you know about the passion of the fans. I don't know, you're just kind of sometimes a bit oblivious or ignorant to the fact that this, like stories like this, and you're trying to fight for it, but yeah, it is interesting. It's great. It's
set him off again. You want to get part 2 of that as well, just on the Bulldogs?
I want to get stuck into COVID again. Let's get after this, the farce that was COVID.
So today we are going to get into a few great topics. We'll start with arguably the player movement that has had the most impact over the last 10 years, maybe even longer. Cooper Cronk leaving the Melbourne Storm to go to the Sydney Roosters. The Sydney Roosters obviously moved Mitchell Pearce on. Not only that, they win 2 premierships in a row. Cooper Cronk, of course, breaking his scapula for one of the grand finals, one of the toughest performances ever in a grand final. It was a move that has, had huge ramifications, Chammy.
It did. And Jimmy, I imagine you were still playing, right, at this period. What was going through the playing group? Like, was everyone... Because everyone, the Roosters and the jokes about the sombrero and whatnot, was everyone in the game like thinking this is not fair? Like they're already contenders.
I think there was a little bit of that sentiment. Yes, just firstly, again, it's great now to look back through almost through a different lens. And it was only the other day we were talking about Melbourne Storm systems and how everything is planned. There's multiple options. If one option fails or falls over, here comes the next option. And I think it's probably the first time that someone of significant importance in the spine has said, I'm going to leave, and it not be pre-planned or premeditated. Obviously, they managed to keep Smith and Slater there for their entirety of their careers. Jerome Hughes played a couple of games at the Titans. He's likely going to stay. Cam Munster, and obviously they've got Pezzett waiting for Longo. Maybe Pappenhausen will stay as well. We don't know, but they always seem to have a multitude of options. And with this, it really did shock the rugby league world when Cooper Cronk announced that he was moving to Sydney and he was looking to continue playing at a Sydney club. Obviously, 9 Sydney clubs. I think it's fair to say that all of them would have gone and had the meetings with retention, recruitment, coaches. How can we get Cooper Cronk in? All of them.
Yeah.
But bar none.
Yeah. Well, it's fascinating. Like the story moves to Sydney for love at the time. Like he struck up a relationship with his now wife, Tara Rushton. And Melbourne... the deterioration of the relationship with Cameron Smith that followed as well was a huge story in the game at the time.
Was that legit?
The deterioration in their relationship?
Well, like that they didn't see eye to eye after this?
Yeah, that was 100% legit, yeah. What the reasoning was for it, only they will know. But there is no doubt whatsoever that they fell out after Cooper left the club. As I said, the reasons, well, only they know. But it just added another element to it all because if you remember, wasn't there a photo of Cooper choking Cameron on the floor? Was it in the grand final? That was iconic. So It was huge. And probably the biggest storyline was what happened to Mitchell Pearce as well. Like, he was the punching bag for a long time of New South Wales, being close with the Roosters, and the club making the decision to move on a favourite son to bring in Cooper Cronk. Huge. And that upset Mitchell Pearce. And they were trying to tell him, you've still got a home here, we can work with him. But that was a slap in the face that led to Mitchell Pearce ending up at the Newcastle Knights, Kalen Ponga following suit. It was a huge story. And in the end, they were justified in their decision, the Sydney Roosters. They won back-to-back premierships. And that one with a broken scapula, the lengths that he went through to play, like not a single run, just directed the team around the paddock and led them to a grand final. In a way, Melbourne lost that grand final because they got so caught up at trying to get to them that they forgot what they were trying. They forgot what they were good at. They got so caught up in the Cooper Cronk and trying to get at him that they lost that grand final. And it is one of the great grand final stories.
So to be fair, just on that, a lot of teams will have the tactics to chase like deficiencies. So I don't know just how uncommon that would be at Melbourne to go, okay, let's look for the weakest link and bombard that. That is quite a common theme in and amongst attacking strategy going into any sporting contest. Like, yeah, we've got our style of play, but maybe part of our style of play is identify weaknesses or potential weaknesses within the opposition. And when you've got such an influential player, granted, he's not going to be running the ball, but there's, you can say this might be cruel, but to send him off injured and put the Roosters down to 16 players, like that would have been one of the intentions.
Yeah, no doubt. They would never admit that.
No, but you can't kid anyone.
If the guy's hanging by a thread, you're going after him, and then the hope is that thread gives way and he's off the field.
Well, you're gonna test his will.
Yeah.
Okay, you've got your shoulder strapped up, ready to go. We know you've been doing absolutely everything, but we know you can't have tested it in terms of the ability to make a proper tackle. So let's test it out. Let's see if you're willing, if you're game. And obviously, Cooper Cronk, very, very intelligent. The positions that he would put himself in, and the fact that he didn't get exposed is a sign of intelligence.
Mm. For Cooper Cronk's legacy, ultimately, it puts him in a greater spot. 2 extra premierships. I mean, the Roosters had a great team. They might have won them with Mitchell Pearce anyway, but it helps his legacy. But at Melbourne, his legacy has been damaged significantly by the move. Of course, at Amy Park, there's a statue of Billy Slater. There's a statue of Cameron Smith. In the grandstand, there's a Billy Slater grandstand. There's a Cameron Smith grandstand. There's nothing there for Cooper Cronk at the stadium. You know, and that's probably harsh, given what he did for that club. Yes, he left and won those 2 premierships, but in terms of Melbourne, now the main focus for their history is Slater and Smith, and Cronk's name is sort of forgotten almost in that.
Well, I think that, to be fair, and Jimmy would be better equipped to answer this question, but I would say that those two, as players, would be ranked higher in the history of rugby league than Cooper. So,
but is that fair as well? Considering he left and won 2 more premierships, maybe he wasn't given the credit he deserved at Melbourne as well.
And maybe that's right there, Charlie. You make a very valid point that maybe Cooper was underappreciated, and a way to showcase that would be, I want to go and win 1 or 2 somewhere else. I think when I look back at maybe the past couple of decades, or even throughout history, there's a strong case for Billy Slater to be the best ever fullback, not just of a generation. A strong case to say Cameron Smith is the best ever number 9 captain, origin player, Australian player, the best ever player to play the game. A strong case for that. But with Cooper Cronk, there probably isn't. Like, when you think of the other number 7s that were around that time, other number 7s throughout history, like his name comes up, but I think even if you look at origin selection, a lot of the time as a 14, because Thurston was the 7. And I think that factors into it a little bit as well. And that is not a knock on Cooper Cronk. That's just probably the higher elevation of Smith and Slater.
Yeah.
because I think the one thing that tipped it over the edge, and you talk about the relationship with the Melbourne Storm, was the fact that he chose to go to the Roosters. He didn't go to a club that was, rebuilding. He went to their biggest rival.
Yeah.
And he went and was what stood between them and another premiership. So that made it hard for the club as well. Like that, they love him. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that he's not a person that they adore at that football club, but there was no doubt this sense of disappointment. It's like, mate, you've chosen to go to our biggest rival. And really, he did stand between them and another premiership. So I still think that is I think that's the biggest signing story, obviously of the decade, but potentially of all time.
Do you think that's maybe reshaped how Melbourne deal with players leaving, especially those under contract? So I'm looking and forecasting ahead to the potential release of Cameron Munster. Now, Cameron Munster knocks on the door and says, or there's a level of negotiation, a team comes in for him. If it's a Penrith, a Bulldogs, or a Roosters, Melbourne say thanks but no thanks. But now it's potentially a Perth Bears. There's more of an appetite. We will release you, but only to a club that we see as not a competitive rival for a premiership in the next bit of
good point, because after that, the Storm made it a point of having a say in where players go. Like, remember with Josh Addo-Carr, I think they had conditions around his release and we have to get this in return. So maybe they have been strategic since that, because maybe they didn't envisage him walking out and going to the Sydney Roosters. Because if memory serves it correctly, he only decided that he was going to Sydney. He hadn't made a decision of where he was going to play.
And I think he was allowed the release, or the release was agreed. And then maybe if you're Melbourne Storm, you're looking at it and go, well, of the teams available, he won't go to the Roosters because they've got Mitch Pearce.
They've got Mitchell Pearce, yeah.
And I guess that's a logical, and he's got 2 years left. He can't go. He'll be, and I think it was 2018. He moved to the Dragons. Had just signed Ben Hunt. I think it was hard for any club to fit him in. It was always going to require a few moving parts, and even that. This to the next point I bring up is this where the league should have looked at it? And when a player like that comes onto the market, all things being equal, in a salary cap sport, he probably should have gone to the Tigers at the time, but for Cooper Cronk, he's not going to go there.
Yeah.
And as soon as the Roosters came, that was the obvious choice, right? But I guess for fairness of competition,
but the Roosters took a huge risk. You got to think about how the relationships that Mitchell Pearce had with that playing group, that could have completely backfired. They were off it. They were really disappointed with the fact that Mitchell was going, Boyd Cordner, Jake Friend. He was so close with that Roosters playing group.
Yeah.
That had the potential to be, the undoing of that football club. That could have been the undoing of Trent Robinson as a coach. So it's a credit to that football team and to Robbo to be able to, I know they got a great player in the end. You expect it to work, but you know what it's like with team dynamic, Jimmy? If something upsets the apple cart, sometimes it can be hard to unwind that impact. So it didn't. He went to Newcastle on a massive, massive deal, got a payday, but unfortunately after that really didn't reach the heights on a personal level, Mitchell, that he would have liked to.
He was told at the time, Mitchell, that he could stay at the Roosters as well.
Yeah.
He was going to play that 14 role. And maybe that helped soften it with the playing group a little bit, that he was told, hey, there's this 14 role for you if you want, but he's like, I'm not going to play 14, and went to Newcastle.
Well, it was a bit, to be honest, they saw it as a slap in the face. Well, Mitchell definitely saw it as a slap in the face. So whether the Roosters believed it would happen.
As you would. And realistically, you're looking at it and going, the 14 role, I'm going to have to play a bit of dummy half, behind Jake Friend, who plays 80.
Yeah.
Bit of lock, but I mean, there's not a lot of game time there.
I'm a Roosters fan. I grew up Roosters fan, yeah. And I, at the time, I'm sort of gone off the Roosters. One, obviously working in the media becomes less about your fandom, more about the storylines. Sorry to say, everyone. But then I like a battler club. So for them to do something like that, give away a guy who was a local, junior, but come through the ranks, one club player for this guy from Melbourne, I didn't like it as a fan, I remember at the time.
Yeah.
And it was one of the moves. Now I've gone even more off the Roosters as well over the years, how they dealt with cheese and all that sort of stuff. But I remember at the time as a fan being like, what? We're getting rid of a guy who's one club player who's been loyal to Roosters, who would play for the Roosters until they retire for this guy from Melbourne. I hated it at the time.
Yeah, I think a lot of people in Roosters fans felt the same way about it. Like, it just, in the end, you got the premierships. Well done to them, and they had to. People can say what they like. You still have to earn those premierships, and to go back to back, and no one had done it for, I think, nearly 30 years at the
very
time.
long time.
92, 93, it was Broncos against the Dragons. So, yeah, hats off to them. But it did change. It did change the dynamic at that football club. And the other thing people forget is they'd also just brought in James Tedesco as well. That was, I think, maybe the year before. I hope I'm not.
Same year?
It was the same year, was it? Okay, there we go. Tones with the information there. You want to take my spot, Tone? Come in.
But then, in all honesty, then maybe Cooper's with Teddy coming in at the same time. If Mitchell Pearce, Cooper Cronk, probably whoever's there, they probably win 2 premierships.
Yeah, and that would have been the expectation. Like, if he didn't win a premiership, sorry, but it probably would have been deemed a failure, right?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, because of the ramifications and the closeness of Mitchell Pearce, and also what Mitchell had been through, and the club had, stuck by him and provided him so much help and assistance through, what one particular off-field incident that springs to mind. So there was a closeness there that when you go through hard times together, like, it is about winning, and you get those bonds from that, but there's bonds that are made during those difficult times as well. And for when I think of Pearce and the Roosters, that's what I think about, how those bonds would have been created, and that the gratefulness and gratitude he would have bestowed the Roosters with. And then when he felt that was being all of a sudden taken away when you least expect it, of all the things that would have moved them on, it came down to them going after another player on a chance encounter, moving to Sydney because of, for his girlfriend now, and now wife.
And you talked about before playing 14. It's not like Hugo Savala or Cherry Evans coming in for Hugo Savala, a kid he's learning. Like, you're telling an experienced Origin player, hey buddy, just take a back seat for a couple of years while this guy comes and wins the title. Then
and look, I think sometimes clubs word things very carefully and say, no, you're still part of our plans. I think they would have known that it would have been untenable.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just trying to think to the training sessions in the preseason, and Mitch Pearce jumps in for a couple of sets. It just would have been. It would have been. I think. Now that wouldn't have worked.
Yeah.
I think, and Roosters would have known that, and this is why that conversation becomes delicate, because I think deep down, you need to cut those ties completely and say, look, it's going to be too messy. I've experienced that. We're going to talk about a Dragons issue where there's too many, not enough people in. Sorry, there was not the hierarchy. It was just Corey Norman, Gareth Witter, Ben Hunt, Matt Duffy. It just didn't work. And I think that would have been a similar situation with Cooper and Mitch Pearce had he stayed.
You mentioned some off-field incident. How did Pearcey and the dog not make the top 10 stories of the decade? Was that in this decade? Maybe it wasn't.
I think it was before.
Okay.
Yeah, the Aussie Day. Geez, that was but that was got to be one of the biggest media beat-ups ever, that story, in all honesty.
What did he get, 8 weeks?
He was really, it was like a $150,000 fine.
Yeah.
He had to, come out and say he was going to go to rehab, all that sort of stuff. Like, it was for an
over
the top
act. It was like, what am I going to be watching here?
He air humped a dog. Like, it wasn't, and it was like very brief. It lasted like a second. God, calm down, everyone. Just on Pearce at the Knights, I reckon you're a bit harsh on him that he didn't, kick on and do things at the Knights, because they'd won 3 spoons in a row.
Oh no, he was great for that club. I'm saying he didn't win a comp. Like, he was on the verge of doing that at the Roosters, right? Then he'd gone to a rebuild, which is he got paid to go to a rebuild club.
And he brought Ponga. He helped him get Ponga there as well.
He was great for the Knights. He's exactly what they needed, but he was destined to go and lead that Roosters team to a premiership. In the end, his future was leading Newcastle from the doldrums to finals contention, which is great, but I'm sure he'd like a ring on his
100%,
a ring on his finger. Did he win one in the end?
He
won
got
one.
13. They
Yeah,
won
he
the
got
comp. He
13.
won the comp 13. Yeah. So he got one.
Yeah.
Let's move on then, Jimmy. Let's do it. Let's do the topic you just teased. The no fault stand down policy. Personally, I think this is arguably the biggest story of the last 10 years. I mean, I remember at the time there was that summer of just scandal after scandal after scandal in the NRL, and obviously Todd Greenberg thought he had to, react to it with the pressure from sponsors, and brought in the no fault stand down policy. And it was one of your teammates, Jimmy, that was the first person to be affected by it.
Yeah, look. Firstly, I think there was accusations, not proven scandals. I can remember being in England. I think I was just home for Christmas, and it was around the December, and actually coming up on the BBC website, like Jack de Belin has been, I don't know if he was arrested or charged
with sexual assault.
No, it wasn't charged at the time. It was arrested or under questioning, and the Dragons had just come off a fantastic year in 2018. We were so optimistic. I think I've spoken about this before, where we felt if the stars had aligned and the injury gods were in our favour, we could have given it a red hot shake. I think Coach Robinson references the Anzac Day game between the Dragons and the Roosters as a line in the sand moment that they needed to change how they play in order to go and win the comp, because we were the benchmark team at that time. Now, obviously, a multitude of things happened that didn't result in the Dragons winning the premiership that year, but we were very confident going into 18. I remember this story coming up and just thinking, oh, well, I guess it's a matter for the courts, and we'll just rip in at training, and I'll speak to Jack. And then I think coming back, we started pre-season, and just I was almost like blown away by the amount of coverage. It was still it was tractioning. I was just blown away, and media were there almost every day. Kind of like, this is something new. Like, not seeing I'd not been involved in a reaction to something happening like that had been before, but because there was no rules in place, and because previous examples of not too dissimilar allegations or charges, we were under the assumption that it would just be
innocent until proven
guilty, and that the workplace environment would not be affected unless the person decided that they felt that they wanted to focus on the off-field issue. So I guess we were just kind of assuming that normal service would be resumed.
It was a huge story in terms of, like, when it happens in the off season, it makes it even bigger, because in season there's so many other storylines.
Yeah,
the focus can change when something goes on. You can go to something very quickly. We saw 1 minute it's Dylan Brown, then the Cherry Evans things happens, and then like things in rugby league change and our focus changes. But this was a summer of what has happened here, and then the NRL and the brand damage was so significant to the NRL, because it was in a period where that's all anyone was talking about, and they felt as though something needed to be done. Now, I still don't know where I sit with the right and wrong option around the no fault stand down policy, but the NRL were able to prove successfully in court that they are entitled to stand someone down as long as they keep paying them, because of the reputational damage it could have on the sport. And that was the first court hearing that they had to go through, whether or not they could actually stand him down. And he lost that, Jack de Belin, which was a massive moment for him, because you would be able to speak to it clearly. I'm not going to get involved in terms of what happened and the allegations, but purely on the fact that he wasn't able to play when he was maintaining his innocence. You would have seen firsthand the impact that had on Jack, and as a result, the impact that had on the rest of the playing group.
We couldn't escape it. it was. And look, obviously, this isn't like a comparison and poor old Dragons and poor old Dragons players. None of that. But we couldn't escape it. We felt as if we couldn't move on. We didn't. Like, the path was unclear, and there was because nothing like this had happened before for the coaching staff. Like, they didn't know whether it was best for Jack to be in and around training, not be around training. Like, the attention that it brought, we were getting asked constantly around like what any media stuff. It was all about this situation, and I'm with you, Chammy. I genuinely, like, at the time, I was so against it because innocent until proven guilty. There was the case of Adam Johnson, the Sunderland player, who was arrested for serious sexual crimes with a minor.
I think 11-year-old.
No.
Or 13.
15. With but still a minor. And then he was suspended for 2 games, pled not guilty, and then was then became active for Sunderland for 11 months. And Sunderland were under the assumption that he was going to plead not guilty. He pled guilty, and then they sacked him immediately. But and that was 2016, and like, for the Premier League and a Premier League club to do that, and they back the, they got. You could say they definitely got that wrong. He ended up serving like 6 years.
Yeah.
And you could say they got that wrong. But I guess we just didn't. When it first happened, nobody thought it would just be a matter for the courts. And normal, because there was no rule in place. There was nothing in the CBA. And I guess we were adamant that, well, if it's not been agreed in the CBA, then you can't grandfather this. Now I'm in a position where it's the norm, and if a player is charged for certain crimes, or it carries a sentencing of 11 years or over, that's the default. I guess there's a level of understanding that is the norm, but everyone is entitled to their day in court. But even that, with different rules in New South Wales and Queensland around the naming of suspects and
but then
like
the NRL not only does it have to be that 11 years, but they can also at their discretion.
At their
so it's really up to the NRL if it's not 11 years. But mate, that summer there was 5 incidents of serious charges by NRL players against women. I reckon the NRL had to react to the sponsors, and you look at how well the NRL's doing commercially now. Like, obviously, there's a load of different things involved in that in terms of the game growing and everything. But some of the brands are involved in the game, like Westpac, for example, one of the biggest brands in Australia. They need to be able to trust the NRL that they're going to take action for these sorts of things. And the no-fault stand-down policy is a really, really, smart bit of sports administration, because it sets the NRL up where they can just, all right, there's this issue, we can just move it to the side and we carry on playing the game, rather than have Jack DeBellin come out and opposition fans boo him, and then that's a story. And then the story is DeBellin's playing playing well. That's a story. DeBellin's playing badly. That's a story. Like,
and he was an Origin player at the time as well. So like that pressure that would have come with that. I remember, I think Mal Meninga as Australian coach was pretty outspoken, saying the NRL should stand him down. So it was gathering opinion from everyone. And look, Charlie, you're spot on in terms of what you said there about the brand and the supporters, and how that story would have just been another weekly occurrence.
You're very close with Todd Greenberg. He was obviously the CEO at the time, because he was the CEO when you first joined the Bulldogs, correct? How many conversations did you have with him?
I can remember, again, because it was so new. Todd, to be fair, did his due diligence and went and addressed every single club. And he did the right thing in coming to the Dragons, and he faced the playing group and explained to the playing group around why this was happening, and obviously the playing group were leaning on the innocent until proven guilty, like, aspect of a matter for the courts, whatever it may be. And again, because it was so new and it was so fresh and it was inescapable. And look, there was a football side of it as well, where we looked at not just the career of Jack, but the career of us and our staff. There's the ripple effect on, and people go, well, mate, it's a. And I understand how people would say, mate, this is the most serious charge, which would just be absolutely horrendous to experience. I 100% get that, but we were in the bubble of football where, well, if it's guilty, then I'm of the opinion don't ever come out. But we that's if it's guilty.
Yeah. Where'd you guys come in 2019? How'd you perform?
Down near the bottom of the ladder.
Yeah.
But
what was he like at training though? Because I remember hearing stories of he still trained really well. It almost was like water off a duck's back for him a little bit, or at least that's what the image he presented the players.
Look, I guess for Jack, he said, I'm just going to act like quote unquote, like I'm paraphrasing here, but like I'm not going to be treated or act like I'm guilty.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to go around my everyday. I'm
and then
sure
wasn't he moved away from the group at one point? So he was I think he was training with you guys. Is that right? For like most of 2019. Then in 2020 he trained away from you guys.
Yeah, I think things changed and moved. 2019 finished, and then it wasn't long till COVID hit as well, which then, and also again, like we were thinking, like, why is this taking so long? Like, why? Like, there's so many questions from a playing group, and again, this, I've got to bear in mind that anybody that's experienced anything like this be absolutely horrendous, and I can't imagine what that would be like.
Yeah.
But we were like, what's taking so long?
Well, that was the other part, because the Dragons didn't know how to handle the situation as a club. I'll take Jack away from this for a moment. As a football club, they were paying him. They were told they could find a replacement, like for like replacement. They still had to pay extra. And the other part is this: when he came off contract, we stuck by him. They re-signed him while he wasn't playing. So the impact it had on the club and their ability to be effective in the recruitment and retention marketplace, that was significant.
Well, mate, that for me, that was the biggest. It was a joke, really, to say we're going to give you salary cap dispensation to sign a player of equal value. It's like, all right, we'll have Jake Trbojevic then.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
All right, we're done. Oh yeah, of course he's not going to leave Manly.
Yeah.
And then, even from a club's point of view, and again, this is part of the problem that was created from a purely work standpoint, is you bring someone in, they're not going to come for a year. There was no timeline on when this would be over, one way or another. So then you bring someone in on the same money, and then if he's allowed back in, like where do we all stand?
I think they signed Patrick Kafusi.
I think that's correct.
That's what they brought in.
Foose came in, he did.
With all due respect to Patrick Kafusi, not in the same
No.
category as Jack DeBell at the time, Origin player. And the other thing that you had to think about going forward was, like, how long do you keep taking up the chunk of your salary cap for someone? And what if what if he is found guilty?
And then it's always the question, what like an Adam Johnson, where Sunderland and the Premier League were left with massive egg on their face, to put it politely.
Yeah.
Like charges against a minor, you've allowed this person to play the chants in every ground around. They were like.
Mate, I remember I was in Thailand on a trip with mates, and at this bar in Thailand, everyone was singing the song.
Yeah.
Like that song went everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
And like they were left with the Premier League was left with egg on their face. They're like arguably the biggest sporting competition on the planet, the most watched, and you've got this player that's been allowed to play and he pled guilty.
Yeah.
It's like you'd massive egg on your face. Yeah. But then even looking at that recently, Thomas Partey for Arsenal was he was under investigation for 3 years, and there was pressure on Arsenal to stand him down. He wasn't charged. He's recently been charged.
Right.
But he was under police investigation for 3 years.
Oh, wow.
Like,
Well, you lived through another one, Jimmy, and this is the example of where the no fault stand down policy, it can be harsh, because there was a view from clubs saying if you stand it out automatically, you're going to open up to people having all sorts of accusations to ruin people's lives. And we saw it firsthand with Josh Reynolds.
yeah, we did.
And what he went through at the time, I know I'll turn this into Josh Reynolds, but he was accused, from memory, it was domestic violence allegations, was it?
Yeah.
And then the horrific story we found out later about what that woman went through to deceive Josh, fake pregnancies, taking money from him. That was a living example to the NRL as, well, in one way, if you're going to if you're just going to take it on accusations, you run the risk of forcing innocent people out of the game that will ruin their lives. And that was the hard part for the NRL. They can understand that some are going to be serious, some are going to be guilty, and they deserve to be stood down. But there are going to be innocent ones who pay the price. And thankfully, the NRL in the Josh Reynolds situation heard enough of the story to decide that he was okay to play. I'm pretty sure that's what happened. They
It only lasted a few
stood
weeks.
him
I think
down
it only
and
lasted a few weeks.
they flipped their ban. So
I remember Josh. Josh was working for Triple M at the time, like in the weeks leading up to that. And I remember he was in there one day and he looked really emotional. And I said, mate, you were good. And he's like, oh, my partner's had a miscarriage. And like came out later, she was just making up these pregnancies. Like put him, what he was put through by her is insane. Insane.
One of the hardest things I've ever had to do in journalism is, I'm close to Josh, obviously not close as Jimmy, but as a journo, I've got a great relationship with him. At the time he came to me, I was at NRL.com moving back to the Sydney Morning Herald, and he wanted my help to help expose. It was the matter before the police, the NRL were going to stand him down, and he came to me asking for help. And I had all the information, I wanted to help him. But I was at NRL.com at the time. So you can imagine the official website digging into its own, questioning its own head office and what their decision is. I was in the process of moving to the Herald, and in the end, thankfully, Neil Breen did a great job of uncovering the truth when interviewed, I think it was her mum, and exposed the lies that were being told.
Yeah.
And Josh got off and managed to get on with his life. Not that those scars would ever heal after what she did to him.
When you were working at NRL.com, obviously pre that with the DeBell and stuff, were you guys given a mandate of just do not touch this?
From memory, I think we did. Yeah, I think we left it alone. From memory, maybe once when it went to court and it was officially announced, maybe we had something, but we left it alone because at the end of the day, anything we wrote was going to be used against the NRL in court.
Yeah.
So I think there was a mandate at the time to leave it alone. Although we were able to report on coach sackings, we broke the coach sacking, which didn't go down well with clubs. Hang on, how's head office breaking a coach sacking? But
it was I remember NRL.com, and it's not to detour too much at the time, but there was like the broadcasters was furious about it.
Yeah.
All this money had been pumped into it. But like, I don't know, it's quite common in international sports of like head office having a media department. But over here, it just didn't work.
Well, I went over there and I was told we are a news agency. You break stories, and the clubs did not like it. Like I was breaking drama between players and their coaches and coach sackings and all sorts of things. And News Corp as well hated it. News Corp were blowing up that we were getting stories that they were wanting to get, features. I remember I did a feature with James Roberts that caused huge drama because News Corp weren't happy that they didn't get it. And in the end, when Peter... Mate, I've got a lot of respect for Peter V'landys, but when he took charge of the NRL, I knew it was time to get out. So I went back to the Herald.
Let's move along then. Another story.
Just to wrap up on that, I can appreciate the level of complexity when managing this, and there's no right or wrong answer, and nobody really wins. And for the victims of crime, and like forget the sponsors and the general public and their opinion. Obviously, the victims of crime, you have to think about them and the impact that it has on them, or the potential, or the not the alleged victims of crime, but yeah, those people like that go through these horrors, like need to be supported. They do. Like that is beyond fundamental, and everybody is entitled to their day in court, and fundamentally Western civilization is one of the cornerstones and key values of it is everybody gets their day in court and you are innocent until proven guilty. And obviously worlds collide when you throw in the billions of dollars that are at stake here, and the court of public opinion, which does count in decision making. I just maybe wonder if each case should be taken on their own merit. Now that would
require the NRL to play police, which is so hard.
You know what? You can't do that, can you?
Yeah.
You just can't.
It's never going back, Jimmy. They can't.
And you know what, Chammy? I think probably most people would be accepting of that because you're gonna take away some individual requirements for the greater good of the game.
AFL handle it on a case-by-case basis like that. So they don't have a flat no-fault stand-down policy. They basically, case-by-case basis, they consider factors like the nature of the offence, potential reputational damage, and the risk of re-offence. So a player's rap sheet before that.
Yeah, I think, again, it's like Chammy said, that you're almost judge, juror, and executioner there, aren't you?
Yeah. A story from this year, boys. And this year's been crazy. In all honesty, this has been one of the craziest years for news with Lachie Galvin and all the player movement stuff that happened at the start of the year.
I was just thinking to myself, Lachie Galvin's not on the list.
No, but he's a bee's dick away from being on the list. Really, it was crazy. And then the Manly Seagulls, Trey Evans, that's on the list. It was bizarre. It was the TV networks colliding as well. It got mad at one point. You had Tony Mestroff on 360 saying, we've offered him an extension. Then 2 hours later, you had Daly Cherry Evans on 100% footy saying, I've not been offered an extension.
Yeah.
At the end, it's a sad way for one of Manly's legends to depart the club, one club player. He's played his 350s recently, but Daly Cherry Evans, Chammy, wild.
Well, I think this made the list from memory because we started the decade with the backflip and we ended the decade with him departing the club. So that's why I think he's qualified. It's not just on this year in terms of the criteria. Because if we go back 10 years...
That was a bigger story.
The backflip? That was huge.
Huge. I know this story is shocking and it generated so many headlines. But that backflip on what was it, a 10-year, $1 million a year deal, like the richest deal in NRL history. Like that was...
8-year deal.
8-year deal. It was this hope for the Goldie that we've got our man, the knives and just people were so angry at Manly.
Yeah.
And then how the anger just shifted up to north of the border. It was great.
The back page about, what was it, flog this cockroach or something? There was some, they dressed him up in a New South Wales jersey like that. They disowned him.
Yeah.
It might have been the Curimal or the Gold Coast Bulletin.
But it impacted him with Origin even, didn't it, for a bit of time after that?
It did.
And then Manly, he stays in Manly and it forces some of the players in Manly out, some of the legends of that club.
Well, that drama was big. There wasn't just the backflip. It was the fact, remember Watmo, Glenn Stewart, the Stewart brothers, they felt as though Cherry Evans, his contract and staying, that he had to bide his time to earn the money that he was demanding. And that they had taken unders for years to do what was best for Manly. And he was this young upstart coming in and demanding the money.
Weren't they also on back-ended deals?
But I wouldn't. Yeah,
because I think from my memory, and I could be wrong in this.
Desi special, you think
that it was not too dissimilar that what happened at the Dogs, where a number of players had signed heavily back-ended deals, and Manly are looking at their cap and going, "Oh, we need to hope that someone's on 800." And we got to hope that someone will pick that player up for 6. We pay 2. We free up 6. I think. I could be wrong, but I think that was part of it as well. But obviously, maybe when you're on the receiving end of that news, you're looking for someone to blame, and DCE was, arguably the scapegoat. When you've got a player that was on big bucks, that's the scapegoat. We can't, because the clubs do this sometimes. They'll say to a player, we've got no room on the cap. cap's full.
The cap's never full. The cap's fluid. It changes.
And you go, I mean, you want, and look, mate, we've had to. It's like, well, just, and maybe it's the polite way of saying we don't want you anymore, or it's or we feel, we've squeezed as much juice, and that's a harsh reality as a player to accept, but perhaps it's true. But the DCE. Yeah, him going up to the Goldie on that big deal, that was like massive at the time.
Yeah, massive.
And there've been a number of big backflips, but this was what upset a lot of the fans and saying like we've got to change this. And I think this was the catalyst for the 10-day cooling off period rather than the June, because June 30 because.
Made it too easy for players to backflip.
It was.
Yeah.
It was too early because everyone was sweating on that day. It was almost you almost had a free hit, or it could almost become like a game of chess with your current employer. All right, if you don't want to keep me, I'll go. And they go, oh, you won't go. Sign, and then oh shit, he signed. We actually want him back. Like really, you got to look at the handling of negotiations from Manly. So. If I'm trying to keep Cherry Evans back in 2014, was it? 2014, whatever the year
2015 was the first year of the deal. I
so
believe.
if I'm in negotiations with him and I can't secure the deal, and he's going, look, Titans are offering me this, I'm thinking of going, blah blah blah, and you can't come to the you can't come to the party, or you've exhausted your negotiations, and you're almost saying to to Daly, well, this is what we've got, right? And then he goes and he signs, and he doesn't backflip for the original deal. He backflipped for a 10-year deal, a new deal. So why not just offer him that in the first place? This is what pissed a lot of people off, or it should piss a lot of people off, is why wouldn't you just offer him that in the first place? You didn't think he'd have the balls to go. He's gone, and now you've scrambled and you've come up. Like, That pisses me off about negotiations. Our cap's full.
They reacted to the backlash, though, because they were getting criticised for losing him, and they've reacted with a longer-term deal. And the longer the term deal means the more you can back end it. Now, I can't remember if.
But how can you not see? How can you not have the foresight to go? If we let him go, we're going to get criticised. Of course.
Yeah.
Like, you've got to be able to predict that.
Yeah. It was. Well. And then you flip it the other way to what's transpired this year. How do you not know it's going to backfire on you if you don't make him an offer? Club legend's been there. You went through all that headache to keep him there 10 years earlier, and then you get to a point where you don't think it's worth making him an offer.
Maybe they shouldn't have kept him though. We did the 10-year ladder. Look at the 10-year ladder for the Manly Seagulls. They were like 11th or something. Well, it's been a shit 10 years for them, in all honesty.
Yeah, maybe they're happy he's going.
Maybe this is the fluff and the polite way of saying we don't think.
In all, with the real story with DCE is he wanted. He asked Manly for $1 million, $90,000 to $1 million a year. They offered him $700-ish, and then they got. Well, that's what Manly say. That's what Manly say.
Yeah, but there was. I'm across a lot of the detail in terms of what happened between them. There was never ever a request for anything from Jarryd in terms of a figure, and there was no offer put forward. And
there were discussions though.
There were discussions, but
about numbers. There were discussions about numbers.
No, the only discussions about numbers we had were Manly saying that we'd be in a position to offer this.
But DC was offended by the numbers that they brought up.
But he never asked for anything.
Yeah, but he was offended by 700. So if you're offended by 700, what does it mean? His way of
only because it took them. They kept changing their mind, and obviously details.
There is a money and an ego element to why DC is leaving now, though.
It's a matter of respect, and reality is maybe
but that's money. You say it's money then.
And it's a lack of respect in the way they handle negotiations, Charlie.
Yeah.
They weren't desperate to keep him.
No.
Well,
and
that's the point.
Probably.
Maybe that's the point, is that they weren't desperate.
Well, I truly think they weren't.
And you can, if you're not desperate, then you can allow it to run.
Yeah. They only became desperate when they started to cop it in the media. And that's the point. I felt that was weak. If you actually don't want him, then double down and say, look, you've been great for us. It's time we move in a different direction. Point to the 10-year ladder and say, you've been here 10 years. In that period, we finished 11th overall. we don't want to diminish what you've done at this football club. We appreciate you, but it's time we move in a different direction.
Or maybe there was a delicacy around that. We need to wait and see.
Yeah, because they were looking at Jamal Fogarty.
And they backed their the loyalty and the previous public scrutiny. So if you're Manly Seagulls in this situation, I can understand how a 36-year-old halfback, whatever, or maybe 35, I can't recall, that's about to play his 350th game, or at the start of the season, 325, how you'd go, we can't make a call now. Like we can spitball some figures.
But I think they went to him in November and discussed the numbers that I'm talking about. They ran that 700 mark, and he obviously felt that was offensive.
But they then parked it, Charlie. That's the part they've left out. They then decided to say, we'll leave it for now.
Did they park it based on Daly Cherry-Evans' camp's response to the 700 number? Or did they park it because they wanted to wait?
Because they had a meeting with the higher-ups and they said, we're going to wait and see.
Well, you know what? I think that's fair. It's a bit of a risk. We'll give you 700 now.
Yeah.
And you get your future guaranteed, or we just wait and see.
Yeah, but I agree with you, Jimmy, but that's not how they played it. They went on live TV. They went on NRL 360 because Danny and I broke the story. We went with the story at 6:40. That I still remember it clearly. 6:40. He went with it on 9 News. I dropped the story on the Sydney Morning Herald website at the same time. We worked on the yarns. It went up at 6:40 live during while I was going live on NRL 360. Daly Cherry-Evans was coming into 100% footy. He was already organised, not to do this, but he was organised to come in weeks earlier. Then on 360, they turn around and say, we've just heard that Cherry-Evans, what was it? They're making him on offer.
Yeah.
A 2-year deal.
Yeah.
Like,
no, did Mestrov call in, or he called in to say?
Producer,
did they put him on air? They didn't put him on air.
No, they didn't put him on air.
He just rang in.
Yeah.
So I think how that worked.
And
My
Penn rang
understanding of
someone.
that is that Steve Crawley, the head of Fox Sports, has obviously got a good relationship with Tony Mestrov.
Yeah.
When the story broke, he rang him, and
Yep.
Mestrov said to him, "We're going to put an offer in."
That's right. That's right. But that, to me, it was like, well, it's really taken. To me, it looked like a PR stunt.
Yeah.
It looked like he was trying to make it like they wanted to keep him, when essentially, as we said earlier, I don't think they ever wanted to keep him.
You said that DCE was pre-booked.
Yeah.
Should he have pulled out of that appearance?
It was becoming clear that he wanted to say something, right? Danny and I only found out that day.
Yeah, but
That day.
Even more to the point.
Well-
So let look at some of these other stories that we've covered, and in and around people in the game. If they were booked on 100% footy or 360, and these stories break, a lot of people pull out and say, "Look, I can't. I know what's going to happen here. I just need some time." Or the club would say, "Look, it's not a good idea at the moment. No media."
Well, imagine if he didn't, Jimmy, because before he even got on air, 360 have gone up with this offer, and the narrative has been pushed from Manly to make Daly look like the greedy one. That was the narrative. So he could see what games were being played. He went on air then 2 hours later or an hour later and said he cleared the air. And in the end, there was a campaign, a whispering campaign ran from both ends to work out who was telling the truth. And if Daly didn't front up that night, it would have been Manly's version, and people would have turned out, and the narrative would have been Daly's greedy. Look at him. He wanted to clear the air and say what he felt.
But Daly, obviously, the information that you guys got would have been from Daly's camp. So Daly obviously strategically said, "All right, I'm going 100% footy. This is my moment to strike. I'll get the story out there that day. I'll do the appearance. I'll say my piece." He happened to be on 360, but he also used that 360 appearance to do it the way he wanted to do it.
100% footy.
I'm sorry, 100% footy. That's
Yeah,
right.
but he notified the club hours earlier. So this is the part. If the club wanted to,
don't you reckon he timed that around, knowing that he was doing media, knowing that he could get his voice out? And
he
explain
decided
it?
around lunchtime that day that he was going to use his 100% footy appearance to do it. And then we got wind of what was going on, so we did the story. Now, the point I'm trying to make is Manly had a few-hour window between him notifying them that he was going on 100% footy and to when they eventually made the offer. If they were genuine about the offer and wanted to keep him, wouldn't they just ring him directly before it came out, before he went on 100% footy and say, "Daly, here's a 2-year deal." Ring his management. They didn't. They rang Steve Crawley. To me, it was a PR stunt.
But you could say it was a PR stunt from Daly as well, or a potential.
Cool. It was a PR move, of course it was.
Because if
you
look at it the other way, if you've said there that DCE is planned to go on 100% footy and talk about his future. If you think about, and Manly found out, they're going, hang on, we're going to get the shit end of the stick here. We've got to get on the front foot. How can we do that? Right, let's go on 360 before it. And so
it wasn't a real offer.
Well, but that's fine.
Yeah.
But it's like you say, it's that PR game.
That's right.
And I can understand. Well, we have made him, or we've spoke. What is an offer? Like, is it a verbal? Is it written? Like they could spin it in a way. Well, we spoke to his manager about 700, 750.
But then pulled it, and in December, Daly told him he wasn't going to be staying.
Yeah, and that's where you go. So if Manly missed the boat, they're out.
Yeah.
And then it's all on. Then the pressure comes for Manly. How can they do this? Then they're scrambling, and then their training session the next day, they're having to release statements. Like, it's that game of cat and mouse that I don't think it's poor from both parties. I think, but it's the game where, oh shit, they're going to act. Okay, well, we need to get ourselves on TV. We're on the front foot, making sure we're not in damage control come 9 o'clock tonight.
DCE put himself above the club, probably. You can't even argue that. DCE put himself above the club with doing it the way he did it, especially when the players didn't even know about it.
Oh, the players knew about it.
No, some, not all. He hadn't addressed all the playing group and
he
said,
spoke
I'm
to the
doing
senior
this.
players. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but that, mate, Chammy, mate.
He's the captain of the club.
And he's been there for that. He'd been there for that long, mate. And again, different personality types. I get that.
You know what it's like, Jimmy? How many times have you seen you tell a whole playing group, right? Something like, in general, and before you got to think about it. If it's 12 o'clock in the day and you're not on the...
Who cares, though? Why does he care? If he's going to address it tonight anyway, why does he care if a story breaks after telling the players? Who cares?
Because he wants to say it in the way he wants to say it.
He can. He's got the night. He's got 3 or 4 hours.
Well, he did
to
in
wait.
the end. He did in the end.
Because your teammates are more important. That's why.
Yeah.
In my opinion, my teammates are more important. Whenever I'd made a move, I'd want to tell my teammates before my family. Like, I'm thinking back. I'm going off my experience and the experience of seeing other players leave, and big name players like devastated about moving on, like devastated, like and. There's players in the room that you're maybe not particularly close with, and who cares who they tell because it's out there now. But I think you have almost an obligation to tell your teammates before the public.
Did that happen? I can't remember. Did he tell the whole team, or was this?
No, I think no. A lot of the players hadn't been addressed by it.
Yeah.
It's interesting. DCE in the week leading up to his 350th did a press conference. First of all, he addressed everyone saying, "No, I can't. I'm not going to talk about my future." Then he ended up answering questions about his future anyway, which was a bit odd. But he said he had no regrets from the backflip from the Gold Coast Titans, and he's got no regrets for the way he's handled it this time. I find that doesn't make any sense to me. He'd have no regrets.
Well, maybe he's not willing to admit that, or maybe he's a person of strong mind and think, and he would be surrounded by people that back his decision and support his decision, and that's fair. But
also the way that Manly responded in his mind would have justified the way him departing. Like, he accused them of a smear campaign, and in his mind he's thought, well, if they're going to act this way, this justifies why I don't want to be here anymore.
I mean, on the first backflip, Charlie, you can't say you don't have regrets about that. And don't get me wrong, those experiences, I've been involved in negative experiences where you kind of go, I've got no regrets about it, but I wish it probably happened differently, or played out differently, or had behaved or acted in a different way, or would like that moment back. And I'm sure deep down in his heart, DC would have hoped it never got to that. Like, the regret would be it never gets to that. Like, let's talk about a 10-year deal before I go and sign this piece of paper with the Titans.
Yeah.
Like, that when you look at it, it was unnecessary reputational damage. Like, if your decision is to stay, then you don't need the the subplot of I've actually agreed to go, but now I'm going to
There's been
U-turn.
huge backflips. Like there's been a number. Like the rules allowed it at the time. Everyone forget
Yeah.
the rules were different. It was a round 13.
But
rule.
you would still regret, like, if you shook
Yeah.
hands with someone and agreed to something, you'd be like, oh, geez.
Teddy
yeah,
did it
I
with-
made a
I'm-
mistake.
I'm sure
Yeah, and I reckon Teddy
Teddy
probably has some regrets of how he
Yeah.
handled that with Canberra.
He's probably forgotten about
But
it.
he's
probably.
celebrating his 350th at Manly that weekend, and you want him to turn around and say, "Oh yeah, I regret staying here."
No, I
no.
regret handling it the way I handled
yeah.
it. It's
I
almost
regret-
a
I
bit
regret
like
signing for the
psychopath.
time.
It's
Yeah.
almost like psychopathic to be
Yeah,
like,
you've-
oh, no, no regrets. I've got
Yeah,
no
you've got to,
regrets. It's
you've
like-
got to, you've got
Yeah.
to regret signing with the Titans, and not signing with them, but signing with them and not going forward.
Yeah,
with them.
yeah.
And I'm sure, like, I'm not going to speak for him, but I'm sure Tedesco would be like, I'll probably wish that little chapter wasn't there, that I put pen to paper at the Raiders and
Yeah, 100%. You'd be like,
backflip.
yeah.
You'd
But I
be
wish
like,
I'd held it differently. Yeah.
Probably
Josh
should have just.
Papali, remember?
Yeah.
Time with the
Parramatta, was it?
Yeah.
Para
Yeah.
and backflips when Ricky came.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then,
And it worked out.
ironically,
Ironically,
he's
yeah.
one of Ricky's
Yeah.
favourite ever players.
Next story, boys. It's a story that starts in 2014, but we're going to focus on the latter part of it. It's Shane Flanagan being deregistered by the NRL in 2018 as part of his 2014 suspension for all the peptides dramas. He basically he was not allowed to be involved in club matters like player retention, recruitment, and then it was found that during that 1 year ban, there was evidence that he was heavily involved in the club for player retention and recruitment. The club was fined $800,000, and Shane Flanagan was deregistered by the NRL and stopped as coach of Cronulla.
Yeah, it was huge. That whole, it's pre the 10 years that we're focusing on, the peptide saga. But his deregistration and his time out of the game was a massive story. And it was, where he was deregistered was in relation to his involvement around
Was it-
salary cap management.
There was a few emails that were
Yeah,
caught by the salary cap auditor, was
Yeah.
it? Or a routine,
yeah.
was it a routine checkup thing?
Yeah, it was. They'd found, basically proof that he was acting when he shouldn't have been acting.
Yeah.
All those years ago.
Yeah,
And
there was conditions to the suspension that were not upheld from his point of view. But I guess I felt really quite bad for Coach Flanagan in this situation because he knows he's going to be coach, and retention and recruitment is so important. And I think I don't understand how you expect him not to be involved in that, or how he's not going to find a way to be involved in that. I'm sure he'd regret sending those emails or not using just a, what have we got now, different Telegram or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Encrypted communication, like a WhatsApp disappearing message. Yeah, off of Luke Lewis.
I think it was Blake Austin. He was trying to get Blake Austin to the Sharks. One of the correspondents found there were a whole, source from emails from January to September 2014, because he was allowed back into the competition, right? But then they found evidence that he'd breached the rules during his ban in 2013. So, look, I actually thought, I was surprised that he was going to be, because at one point it looked like they weren't going to let him back at all. And then he became available and no one really took him up for some time. And even with the Dragons, when they finally gave him the job, it was with a lot of, not everyone was behind that decision.
It came as an assistant first, or maybe as a recruitment manager.
Yeah.
And then as assistant.
That's right. And he wasn't their first choice. I remember they interviewed and gave the job to Jason Riles. This was post Anthony Griffin. Jason Riles was given that job.
Oh, sorry, you're going from now getting the actual job. Oh, I thought you were talking about when he became the assistant. I think there was even steep rules and regulations when he was assistant. Yeah,
because that's right. They let him come back as an assistant and do other things. But when he finally got the opportunity to coach, I don't think people were jumping out. People were worried. They felt there were skeletons in the closet. There was baggage. Well, over everything that happened at Cronulla.
but not the actual reason he got suspended.
Well, there was whether or not.
Hang on, sorry.
The peptide
Because
saga.
he got suspended because of the peptide issue, and then deregistered for communication, right? Because
Yes.
I think
So they gave him a 12-month suspension, and they said, you are not to contact anyone, whatnot. And then I think 2014 January, a month or so into his suspension, they found evidence that he was contacting people with the Sharks, training arrangements, coaching department.
Was there some recruitment as well? He was messaging about as well, I believe.
Yeah, Blake Austin. He tried to, I think there was a correspondence that they were trying to get him. And then the NRL years later found that. And
it
I
was
think,
like years later as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
That's the thing. I guess so much time had passed. He'd won a premiership with the Sharks, and then all of a sudden, he's gone.
yeah.
Like, as a coach, it's hard to separate and adhere to that 12-month suspension and things like training plans and as long as he's not hands-on. I don't know. It's maybe looking back, instead of the NRL for the peptides saga or and that involvement, should they not, instead of suspending him for 12 months, should they just have stood him down there and then for a year? So Sharks have to bring someone else. I don't know.
Well, that's what they had to do. Who was the coach at the time? Was it Sharpie? Sharpie ended up taking. This is a decade ago now, but like that, I think that was the biggest story of the previous decade. Like
should they have forced him to resign from the Sharks and put a blanket 12-month, 24-month ban on him, and then allow him back in?
I don't think legally they had the right
to ban him.
Well, to tear up his. I don't know. It's a good question
because they ended up doing. They ended up
12-month suspension that he got originally. Yeah.
Because it does seem. I guess I don't know if it's hard to deal with like the punishment of coaches, like, and I know even in like Premier League where managers get suspended and they can't go to the games, and there's all different ways that they talk to the team.
Jose Mourinho sneaking in the washing basket or whatever.
Or even during like COVID times where coaches couldn't and you had to turn this back to COVID, where coaches were farcically not allowed to come into the dressing room.
At some point, we were doing the honourable mentions list.
Yeah. I don't know, like what are you...
It's
like
funny
a
as well.
12-month suspension, it's like if an athlete gets suspended for like doping or for matches, they're still allowed to train. They just can't play.
Yeah.
And maybe I don't know, should they have...
What's the same thing? A 12-month suspension or sack it, like, if he was always intending on coming back, like he just won a premiership in 2016, they made the top 4 in 2018, and that after that year, I think they were knocked out by the Melbourne Storm in the prelim, right? Then you get to... the club's doing well from a football point of view. Then in December that same year, after you're knocked out in week 3 of the playoffs, you're deregistered by the NRL. But you're talking about the original ban in 2014, right? You're talking about that one, how they should have just said, 12 months, you should have saying he's been terminated for 2 years. Is that what, you don't even know what you're saying, do you?
Well, I'm just trying to or the suspension is he's just not there game day. Like realistically, if a player gets a 12-month suspension or an athlete gets a 12-month suspension, they can still train and practice and do everything but compete.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
That's probably more. That's probably more the angle.
Not if you're banned by
what?
Bronson Cherry was banned from all clubs.
He could still train on his own.
Yeah, on his own. Yeah, well,
and he could still
Flanagan could have coached on his own.
He could still get a training program.
He could have Football Manager.
He could have played Supercoach for a year.
Mate.
Yeah,
Football Manager just take a team from the second division up to the Premier League.
What? Like seriously, let's put yourself in the head coach's situation.
Oh, I can understand.
You get a 12-month suspension. You're not allowed to the training ground. Fair enough. You're not allowed on game day. Fair enough. But coaches are
it wouldn't be physical.
Insane. Like they think so differently. They're always planning. They're always thinking like in 12 months, what you just expect them to go, oh, hello, everyone. Oh, who's this? Did we sign you? Oh, that's an interesting choice. Oh, yeah. Like, what do you expect?
No, exactly. It would be physically...
Hey, what are we going to do today for training, lads? Yeah. I don't know. I've not been allowed to plan.
Well, you know what? Maybe around the football stuff, maybe they should have just allowed him to have a say in recruitment and retention, because that was going to impact his return. maybe that, I don't know, but it was
Yeah.
a pretty serious charge, Jimmy. Like, people were surprised he only got 12 months at the time. Now, like everyone forgets how serious things were. Like the allegations around the late Johnny Manor and the effect that the peptides may or may not have had on his cancer at the time. Like, it was heavy stuff.
Oh, I remember that. I remember watching Fox Sports News, and it was the darkest day in Australian sport. Kind of like I remember sitting there watching it. I'd not been in the country long and thinking, no, am I
better not
guilty?
take
Like,
any of those drugs,
what else is going on?
Yeah.
What's going on here? Like,
We had Gallup on, who was a great. He spoke about this all the time. So if you want to go listen to that, tune in. David Gallup, he was great. Last topic, then, boys. I'll give you some honourable mentions actually before we do the last topic, and they're more of the lighter side. Like Anthony's sent these ones into the chat as we were planning them out as sort of some light-hearted ones. Kevin Proctor getting sacked for vaping at half-time of a game.
That's great.
That was a good one. Oh, this is one of my favourites. Lockie Lewis selling the dog's Bluetooth speaker on eBay.
That's good.
brilliant.
That was brilliant, which is odd for Lockie Lewis because he would have come from a wealthy family. He would have come from a very wealthy family. I think he's a Instagram business bro now.
Is he?
I saw on Instagram he's like doing all that stuff. So
Do you remember when him and Bear just have a few?
yeah,
Cody Walker? Was it Cody Walker after him at one point?
Yeah.
he had a bit of a punchable face, Lockie Lewis, didn't he? In all honesty,
Yeah, you said it.
Nathan Cleary, the TikTok COVID dance, Jimmy.
Oh, mate, don't do that. Don't do that. You set him off.
Mate, you'll set me off on COVID.
The Dragons COVID barbecue as well. That's another
yeah.
one. Junior Barlow playing third grade rugby.
That's brilliant.
Greg Inglis kicking a field goal, but his team were losing by 2 points.
Poor GI.
Payne Haas punching on with his teammate for stepping on his fresh white kicks.
Oh, Albert Kelly.
Yeah. And then, and also Imagine Tiger Town. So there's some of the honourable mentions.
Yeah.
In a serious one,
What's
Justin,
Imagine? The documentary.
Just the doco, yeah, the F words and all that sort of stuff.
Oh, mate, that's play on.
The other one we probably didn't mention was Tim Sheens. I guess we kind of covered that a little bit when we did.
Tigers,
argue.
yeah.
But we're finishing off with one of the most controversial figures in rugby league probably over the last decade, Jarryd Hayne. Left the NRL to go chase his dreams in the NFL. I mean, there's a lot of different things that go into this, which we'll get to. But first of all, that was a huge story at the time when the San Francisco 49ers, Chammy.
Yeah, I was lucky to be front and centre of it all. Got the opportunity to go over on multiple occasions to the US because at the end of 2014, he decided that he was leaving the NRL and he had no guarantees of anything. At the time, had he just come off a Dally M? I think he'd just come off a Dally M at the time. And huge story. And he went over to America and I got the chance to follow him a couple of times over there. And still to this day, it is the greatest thing I've ever been able to experience in my career, just being around that environment with the 49ers. I went to NFL headquarters and it was unbelievable, that trip. And Jarryd Hayne
I'm glad you had fun, mate. That's good.
Is this about Jarryd or myself?
Yeah, just tell us about your trip.
Feels like where else did you go? What sport did you see?
What was your favourite
I went to the US Open as well in New
brilliant.
York. That was great.
Flushing Meadows.
Yeah, Flushing Meadows.
How are the bagels in San Francisco? Are they as good as they say?
I won't be staying in Flushing anytime soon.
Did you
again. get
get a bike and ride across the Golden Gate Bridge?
No, mate, I was. Oh no, I did cross the Golden Gate Bridge. Yeah, I did.
Nice.
It was great. It was great. Anyway, end of podcast.
And then Hayne came back, and it didn't really work out for him.
I think that people forget. Like, this was such a huge story. He was the poster boy of Australian sport.
Yeah.
And I was writing 4 or 5 stories a day, and they wanted more. People just couldn't get enough of the Jarryd Hayne story.
Was that a time where, like, clicked on articles would have been registered and not?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you would have been able to see
the algorithms were going crazy. Like, you could see the numbers on the story.
Where were you? Herald in 2015?
Herald. I went over
And
there.
is this just about him being there? It's not, because he only played a couple of trial games, didn't
No,
he?
he played that first night. Was it Monday Night Football? And he dropped that punt. And that was the beginning of the end. Because he was sensational in the trial games.
Oh, he actually did he? I didn't realise he made the roster.
First week of the NFL, prime time, and the ball's gone up. And what is it? I'm not an NFL expert. What is it when you wave the ball away when it goes up from a punt? You can just
Carry, whatever.
whatever.
It is.
And he's decided to take this kick, this punt, and he's dropped it and fumble, they call it. And
Was
that
it a
was
turnover?
that was
as
the
well?
beginning of the. I'm pretty sure it was.
Wow.
That was the beginning of the end of Jarryd Hayne. But he was like, and it wasn't just in Australia. Like, it was the talk of America. It was like, well, maybe not America. The talk of San Fran. It was a big deal over there.
Like
I
that,
remember-
this Aussie had come over.
yeah, it was a huge story. I remember speaking to Andrew Bogut went down to Golden State Warriors practice while I was there, and even Bogut was across and he was talking about it with me and how big of a story it was. It was huge, and I think he became a bit. It's funny because he became a bit hard to deal with. He's always been hard to deal with, Jarryd. I remember going into the sheds in Denver, like we're interviewing Colin Kaepernick and all these guys are happy to do 10, 15-minute interviews. And I was there with Nick Walshaw and from the Telegraph, and we went to Jarryd and said, "Oh mate, can we have a chat?" And like we've been over there the whole time with him, and he just looked at us. He said, 3 questions, and we're just like, "What? We've been your number one cheerleader over here." We were pretty disappointed at the time. I think Jarryd, he'd sent me messages before the game having a crack because I released this story about he'd released a logo. Remember he had his own logo?
Yeah.
And I put the story out that he's released his own logo. And he was blowing up that I'd put it out because he hadn't trademarked it yet. And I was just like,
Oh, who cares?
it's like, you wore the shirt to a press conference.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm writing that I only know about the logo because you wore it. And he had the shits with me. And after that, he became really hard to deal with. But he was the story of the country. And then, unfortunately, for one reason, I've decided to give it up after the first season, change a coach over there. And he decided to come back home. And that in itself was a huge story. And then there was a civil matter with the woman in America. Then he came back home and everyone thought he'd go back to Para. He makes the decision to sign at the Titans. And then what transpires, he ends up back at Parramatta. It doesn't quite work out. And he's on the verge, has agreed to a deal with the Dragons when the charges
Yeah, that's right.
come out about the sexual assault allegations that saw him spend time in prison, which was he was later, I guess he was later, he had an appeal and managed to get off some of the charges. But I've never seen a bigger fall from grace in covering sport for 15 or so years than
Yeah, wow.
the fall from grace of Jarryd Hayne.
I remember just being like shocked that he was going over, and because he was such a dominant player in the NRL, and then I've had this dream. I'm like, what are you doing? What? And you know, I moved countries for a dream. I was like, I get it, but kind of don't.
Yeah.
And then I guess, I don't know if he was the first to do it, but there was a recent Welsh rugby union player. He went and tried over there. He's now back in union.
Some of the AFL guys went
Yeah.
over there as punters, I think.
Punters, yeah.
Val Holmes tried it after him.
Yeah, oh yeah, of course. Val.
Jordan
yeah.
Mailata's gone from league to union and over to NFL and become an absolute
No one.
superstar.
He was literally the
Yeah,
best
Val-
player in the
Val-
game.
Yeah, I forgot Val Holmes did it, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He didn't play an NFL game.
No,
but-
he got practice. He got practice squad though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe played in the preseason. Holmes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it was
Far out,
it
you
was
forget.
huge.
Oh, my God, Val Holmes played NFL.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was Taumalola. Didn't he go over and have a some sort of?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's talk now about who's
Tom
Ben Takura.
Tom Baird just did as well. I think he had I think he just went and toured facilities. And
Yeah. He said that on the podcast when we had him on.
Yeah, they had like an international. They have an international program now.
Ben Takura they're looking at the moment. I
Well,
think
it makes sense that NFL are expanding their horizons and their vision for players. They recognise that there's potential athletes that can play their sport. I know they go, they get a lot of Jamaican
and Samoan as well.
Well, the big power athletes and also speed is such a key element.
Yeah.
In NFL, they're looking at Jamaica. Those that can run a certain time, well, you're halfway there.
Yeah.
Jarryd Hayne. He was like the equivalent, if not bigger than the Latrell of this time. Like remember he got shot out in King's Cross. His profile was huge.
God, I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah. His profile was huge. And as a footballer, like that run in 09 to me is still the greatest stretch of form that I've ever seen. Better than Benny Barber, better than Tom Trebojevic. What he put together, I was sitting there at Cogra in that last game of this, the first final when he scored that incredible try. Like what he was doing was out of this world. And everyone always talks about how naturally gifted he is, but he just never, like the application wasn't there, like training. He could have been anything. To me, he had the talent to be one of the greatest, if not the greatest player of all time.
Yeah,
but he
wow.
never had the mental, the commitment. Like you speak to players that played with him, they were like, how does he do what he does without training, putting in the effort? He just didn't give a shit. Like he was just naturally so gifted.
I guess sometimes that is what's needed. That mentality of, well, whatever happens, happens. And you can almost care too much. And maybe the fact that attitude got results, I mean, why, a shift, a change is dangerous.
Yeah.
I saw him at Origin game 3. Game 3 was in Sydney, wasn't it, this year? Game 3?
Yeah.
He was there, like, hoodie on, with his I assume his partner. Yeah. He looks a bit rough these days, where he's gained obviously a lot of weight, and it's a huge fall from grace, as you say.
Yeah, it was that story as well, because that came after the sexual assault allegations came after Jack DeBellin from memory. It wasn't long after.
Yeah, it was.
So the Dragons were linked with him. Like the Dragons had all but done.
I think he was.
He agreed.
Like,
Were you at the Dragons at the time?
Yes, I was. Yeah.
So you would have heard about it.
Yeah. I think it was like
We've got him.
Pretty much got him. Yeah.
The word on the street was the NRL got wind of the fact the Dragons were about to agree to and had to tip about this was about to go down with Jarryd Hayne, and warned the Dragons that this was about to break and the contract never was registered.
Yeah.
Because they would have found themselves in a situation with 2 players on no-fault stand-down policies for sexual assault allegations at the time. So the word is that the NRL tipped off the Dragons to make sure that they knew what they were getting themselves into. So, yeah, the Jarryd Hayne story. It's do you think, Jimmy, like, is it hard to talk about? They were going to strip him of Dally M's and whatnot. Now, it's hard in this situation, but do you think going forward, people's achievements should be wiped from history if they find themselves on the wrong side of the law? Because in my mind, you can't erase that, what was achieved. And that came prior to any allegations in the Jarryd Hayne situation. Do you think, because the NRL were umming and ahhing about what to do with that, do you think it's a dangerous precedent, or it's fair game if you end up in a situation where you end up incarcerated, that you should be stripped of your honours?
Yeah. Look, I am all for that.
Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. If you get found guilty of a serious crime, absolutely. Yeah, no doubt about it. If you're found guilty of it, gone. I have no issues with
Even
that.
if it's 10 years after the fact?
Doesn't
what
matter.
What if it's 30 years later? Do you strip?
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. I think about, like, Jimmy Savile, and like how what he was awarded when he was alive, and then what's come to light, fucking rip that up, and burn it.
Yeah.
Like, I guess that is like, he is up there with the worst of the worst that's ever walked the earth. But then I just think if you found guilty of that level of crime, then you nobody needs to be reminded of that.
Yeah. It's the old, do you separate the art from the artist? With like Michael Jackson, you still hear his songs on radio and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed this podcast though. We've done it the last couple of weeks, boys. It's been a pleasure.
Been great.
10
It's been
years.
fun, hasn't
It's been fun. We've done a 10-year ladder. We've done now the decade of stories. What's next?
We need to do the on-field stories, because they're all pretty much.
Well, then that's enough. There you go.
Yeah, well, I reckon there's probably I don't know.
You get 10 easy.
The 10 biggest on-field moments of the last decade.
Yeah.
First and field goal, you got to have that in there.
Yeah.
15
Well, it's
grand
funny.
final.
Technically, that's not in the last 10 years.
Well, you counted 15 in this one.
I did.
Because Hayne left in 15, so
Well,
otherwise
also,
we're going to
we
have to let
counted
it out.
15
Bad
in the
for-
ladder as well.
Yeah.
And on the comments, it was like, only an NRL podcast could make the 10-year ladder over 11 years.
Well done, whoever noticed that, mate. You know what else? If we don't do 10, if we don't count 15, we miss Bad Friday.
Oh, gotta do Bad Friday.
You got to do it.
Teddy's origin winning moment where Ferguson skips down the sideline.
Yeah. 10.
The Ash is
complete
coming
years.
back.
No, that's terrible.
not top
That's
10.
terrible.
I'll be watching the Pacific Championships.
is
Go the Pack.
terrible.
All right. Well, thank you for listening, everybody. If you have got a top 10 moments of football, let us know in the comments, and maybe we can address it. But Chammy, pleasure. Charlie, pleasure. I would say as always, but I'd be lying.